I can build an entire data center, or I can help someone to print or reboot a computer. I don't have a problem with that. We were building offices all around the world.
What are the skills that you look at and go, I'm really glad I learned that got you there?
To understand how my individual contributor actions and deliverables affects and create a change up the chain.
Because it's a podcast and because, you're in Silicon Valley, we're legally obligated to talk about AI.
If a 12-year-old with zero experience can do that, I need to help my team to understand that we can do better. The future of IT teams is going to be completely different.
I'm joined today by Guillermo Porcaro. He is the VP of Corporate IT for Medallia and has had a pretty amazing career spanning both Argentina and here in the United States. So first off, Guillermo, thanks so much for taking the time to visit with us. I guess just to get rolling, why don't you tell me a little bit about how you got into the role that you're in now? Tell me a little bit about the path you took. What did it take to get you into sort of like high-level IT?
First of all, thank you for having me, Matt. It's a pleasure. So how do I get into this world? I mean, I was a kid. My dad was one of the first ones in Argentina to be part of the software development team for a company. So I was one of the first kids to have a computer, to have an internet connection with a 50K modem, doing those weird noises.
Yeah, nice.
And as every kid playing with a toy, I was breaking it, fixing it, and learning my way on how to work with that, how to play with that, how to start. I still remember the old times where we use things like Encarta instead of searching on the internet, right, for school and things like that. So I was like involved in technology from a very, very, very early age. And down the road, I started helping him fixing computers when I was like 18 years old. So it was always something that I liked. My high school was kind of a technical high school. We had electronics. We had a lot of things related to technology. So I was like always involved there. Probably the first couple of motherboards that I burned, I couldn't fix it, to be honest. But down the road, I started fixing computers, building computers, playing with those kind of things, and try to learn down the road, to the point where eventually I started learning English from also a very early stage. I remember working for a company in Argentina, going all around downtown fixing computers. I was like 20 years old or something like that. And then I saw a sign in a university, IBM is looking for you and you can take this course. Back in those days, it was Unix, AIX.
Sweet. Yeah.
And I remember there was like 300 people and I ended up on the top 5. So I ended up working for IBM and so in a pretty much service delivery center in Buenos Aires, and started the career there. Started to understand the world of IT processes, ITSM, team collaboration, a lot of things that for me were completely new, right? Like always working solo, just fixing hardware or installing operative systems, applications for small companies, to be part of a team with different seniority, with processes, ticketing systems. So that was pretty much my first exposure to the world where I live today, and it was great because I learned the good and the bad of these big corporations that I could later translate to a startup mentality and try to meet something in the middle in terms of those bureaucratic processes that you can find on those huge companies, that they do exist for a reason, obviously, because of the size and what a startup needs, right? So it was a super early stage, and I'm grateful for the opportunities that I had back on those days, especially to join IBM and learn that world. And then I started moving to different companies to learn different ways of working, different technologies. I started with, like I said, with Linux, then I moved to Windows, and then I started learning networking, doing some certifications, going to the university. So
When did you make the transition from working at, because you worked, I mean, you're at IBM, Chevron, a bunch of big companies in Argentina, and then you ended up in the US. What was that transition like? And was it shocking to go from working for a big company in Argentina to working for companies in the United States directly? Like, how did that work?
usually these companies are the Argentina branch of a US company, right? In like Chevron was a delivery center as well. Philip Morris was a delivery center as well. And I was always in that big corporate world to the point where I found myself later working for another Argentinian that lives in Chicago and built this small company to provide MSP services to small and medium businesses. So I had the opportunity to build a team for them in Argentina. So I was building my own little delivery center for a small company. And it was a fun experience, right? A lot of young kids joining. We rented a house. We were working from there. We were doing barbecues and asados, which is a big thing in Argentina, right? And it was a lot of work, but fun times at the same time. And I started to involve myself into the nuances of building a team, right? Hiring people, recruiting, understanding how to put the different talent or the different flavors of talent together, not to conflict and to work as a team. I remember that we had a dispatcher, we had tier one, tier two, tier three. It eventually grew up. That company is still up and running, and I'm happy. The way I left that up and running and to the point where they are still succeeding today, right? I'm still in contact with them, and we have conversations and philosophical conversations about AI nowadays and things like that. But then what happened there was that I was approached by Medallia. That was this unicorn in the Silicon Valley software company opening an office in Argentina, only 20, 22 people when I joined. And it was like, what is this? Because for me, it was pretty different to the kind of companies that I was working for at the beginning, right? So when I went to that office, I saw the Silicon Valley vibe of a fun office
Egg
with,
shares and like,
yeah,
cold brew coffee and the whole thing. Yeah.
so you stock kitchen with everything there. I remember my old days on big corporations where you had to purchase the coin to put in the machine to get your coffee, right?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So jumping from that world to a kitchen where someone is complaining that the smoked salmon is out, it was like, she would be here. And so,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I saw people, young people, really talented people, and for the very first time in a long time, I was going through a process of interviews where I was barely the most intelligent people in the room. So it
Yeah.
was like I was not at all. I mean, let me rephrase that. I was not I was approached by people that I was like, huh, okay, okay, super fast guys, really bright minds, questions in interviews that were like getting me out of my comfort zone. And I was like, that was a challenge. And I do remember that back then the opportunity was just to be the IT guy in the Argentina office. Right.
Okay.
So it was pretty much a step down, but I saw something there. The way these guys were working, the vibe in the office, the product, the leaders. And I still remember something that I said on the final interview. I was talking to the architect back then that is now a friend. And I said to him something like, I wouldn't mind if I need to spend a couple of years being the IT guy. I'm just helping HR on how to print. And he was like laughing, and because he was actually making those examples like, oh, you've been in management already, you built a team, you did this, you did that. How are you going to handle the fact that you will be potentially just the IT guy for some time? It's okay. I can. build an entire data center, or I can help someone to print or reboot a computer. I don't have a problem with that. I'm still today hands-on
Okay.
VP's
And
corporate.
being open to that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have a problem rolling up my sleeves. Um, so I ended up moving to Medallia, and for a long time, I was taking care of the Argentina office. I always had this mentality of trying to do things the fast, pretty much an agile mentality, but try to be good at the quality of things that we are delivering. And I remember that when I joined Medallia, there was this offsite schedule for. I joined in August 3rd. There was an offsite schedule for October. And the leader of the Argentina office was like, the offsite is the perfect time for you to fix the Argentina office Wi-Fi, the network, and the infrastructure because nobody's going to be here. And I was like, yeah, but that means I'm not going, right? And he was like, yeah, obviously. And I was like, no, I can do that in a weekend. And he was like, what? And like, so I had the connections, some vendors and people that could help me. And I ended up doing that late August. So on Monday, I opened the door, everything was changed, new access points, new servers, new switches, new wiring. And they were like, whoa, okay, this guy is serious.
Yeah.
So I ended up going to the offsite, meeting the Silicon Valley office. Medallia back then was in Menlo Park.
Okay. Yeah.
And I was shocked by the culture shock from a big company to a startup mentality, right? Because the hyper growth stage of a startup is messy, is complicated to keep things tidy when you're growing and growing and adding and expanding an office and opening another office and doing this and that. So there was a lot of room for improvement in the things that I could help to that team. So I was quickly showing some skills on how to, hey, let's change this core switch in the Palo Alto office. I know how to do it. I can stay one more week and we can do this, we can do that. So I am super grateful because Medallia gave me the right opportunities and really valued my contribution from a very early stage. So the rest of the progress into moving from an IC to a manager was pretty much natural, with the intermediate stage of eventually being a technical leader for
Okay. Yeah.
team or that team, right? I remember that I was temporarily managing the help desk for some time back in I think it was 2018 or something like that. And then I was part of a IT engineering team. We were building offices all around the world. I traveled to Australia, London, Tel Aviv, to the Bay Area to build 3 offices. We built an office in Times Square. That was super interesting in terms of timeline pressure, etc.
Yeah.
That was pre-IPO. So um, I I would say that the transition was natural because I was given the right opportunities to prove that I could deliver. Right. So
So you made the transition, and then you've also gone. So during your career, you've gone from hands-on management. You've always said, you kind of keep your sleeves rolled up and you're always diving in and that sort of thing. But then like you end up in this VP role, right? And my question to you is like, one of the senses I get from, like, we've done a lot of these podcasts. One of the senses I get from IT leaders is that there's like the visibility you have when you're an individual contributor. And then there's like the visibility you have when you're a manager. And you even mentioned, like, as a manager, you start thinking about, like, okay, I'm blending skills and there's like a recipe for a team that I'm making. So it's slightly different. And then once you become a VP, there's another level of visibility that you have. So I'm super curious, like, as you make these leaps, like, was there anything that was sort of shocking to you about, like, okay, now as the VP of corporate IT, like, oh, I have a different view. Like now I have more of a view of the business or something like this that you didn't have before. Like, what was that like?
it was a shock because I was pretty much pushed into some of the roles that I had to take over the years because eventually someone left or someone moved laterally. I in 2024, the CIO and the VP that were above my reporting line both left at the same time. And I was given the opportunity to step up into a functional VP role while I was still a director. And I'll be always grateful to the CFO back then that gave me the opportunity, and my former manager that before leaving, he was always involving me in things that were above my level, like the
Okay.
budgeting, the forecast, the operational forecast, the capex versus opex, how these pieces all fit together, the run rate, the everything, right? So I was not on a roll, but I was involved in the meetings. I was shown how this works, right? So when I found myself stepping into that role, I already had some context, so it was not all new, right? I was not surprised, but questions coming my way around how are we going to do this, how are we going to do that. And I remember that they moved on around August, and our fiscal year ends on January. So in September, I started finding myself planning for the next fiscal year, right? And one of the things that I remember was that I was looking at this org, my own org, as a machine, and each one of these teams as a piece of that machinery. And I was kind of applying an engineering mindset to a business strategy that, besides the numbers and the dollars and the expenses here and the run rate and the operational cost, I I it was pretty clear for me how to move some pieces to optimize and do a reorg and a transformation on this organization. So I started realizing, and to be fair, this was conversations that were already ongoing before these leaders left, but I had the opportunity to actually materialize that into a project and did a self-funded reorg. So we were reutilizing some engagements with vendors and contractors in APAC to something better in terms of time zone alignment in LATAM, right? I'm from Argentina. So when one of the values that I see from that is the time zone alignment, the great
Sure.
talent,
Yeah. Yeah.
the cost efficiency, and a lot of companies have delivery centers down there, and not everyone's aware of that. I'm still running into people in the Silicon Valley where I started talking about Argentina, and they're like, "Where's that?" And that's a huge
Drive south
tool.
for a long time. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a huge tool that you're not even aware that it exists, right? So when I moved to the US, I was a director. I was given that opportunity. So then the leaders left. I put myself into that shoes. I was given the opportunity. You know how that works, right? You first get given the opportunity and then the title. That's natural in every company. And I started creating this puzzle of things that I was moving like here. So we're gonna stop this in APAC, and we're gonna build this team in Argentina, and then we're gonna change the way this is structured. So we're gonna create a frontline team because we have these gaps that. But I was approaching technical problems but I was finding myself in a position where I could do the business changes to
Yeah.
fix
The
this.
organizational stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
had the uh, I had the ability to justify and build a business case out of operational problems that I wanted to fix. Right. So with the two directors that report to me, we started creating this new reorg where a new frontline team, the helpers reporting here, collaboration services, data center services, network services, identity and access management, defining technical leads. And we moved from an organization that had some contractor engagements to pretty much a self-funded full FTE with more team members down there in Argentina and Mexico as well. So we were better distributed, better time aligned. And now, almost 2.5 years later, I can say that was pretty successful.
Can I ask along that line, like when you're thinking about professional development, right? Because one of the things I'm always interested in is as I'm coming up in my career, my tool set as an individual contributor is, how fast I type, basically. And I become a manager, and now my tool set is the team that I'm leading. But one of the things you're describing here is I'm going to put together a business case for organizational changes to align better. And you mentioned that you sort of had good visibility early on in, the business and the run rate and like what was CapEx and what was OpEx and what did the gross margin look like and all of these sorts of things. I'm curious when you think about that, like when you're putting together this business case, if you were talking to yourself, to the young GP when you were an individual contributor, what would you tell you to really pay attention to coming up so that you were able to like do that business case, you're able to think about it that way? Because not everybody can make that transition, right? Like what are the skills that you look at and go, I'm really glad I learned that got you there?
That's a great question. I mean, I sometimes found myself with questions coming my way from individual contributors that are younger, probably 25-year-old, 30 years old. And that resonates to my young me,
Yeah,
right?
100%.
Asking
Yeah,
the
you're like,
same type
I
of
remember
question.
when I was that age. Yeah,
I
yeah,
was
yeah.
thinking that way, right? And sometimes I feel like I find myself explaining that to someone that is thinking like I was thinking, right? And explaining that maybe some managerial decisions are not purely based on the individual, but the business, and that I have a million of examples, right? But sometimes the way that I would like to approach this is for individual contributors to understand how things work up the chain and down the chain, right? And that is why one of the pillars that I was trying to build in this org and all the teams are the accountability, the trust, because one of the things that I was learning on the road, and I think that's to answer your question, that is the most valuable one, is to understand how my individual contributor actions and deliverables affects and create a change up the chain, right?
Okay.
Because it was really transformational for me to understand that if I have a due date on a project that is part of a program, that is part of something bigger that we need to potentially deliver before the end of the year or something like that, me failing here will make somebody else fail here and somebody else fail here to the point where
Yeah.
eventually I can be the small little trigger that pushes the CIO to explain to the CEO, hey, we couldn't do that on
Yeah.
the day that we agreed, right?
Yeah.
So understanding how those things work and trying to help people abandoning this mindset of, yeah, I think I have that for Friday. And then we talk on Friday and it's like, oh no, yeah, maybe it's gonna be Tuesday. And those kind of things are sometimes perceived naturally, but what I'm trying to change is the way they perceive that up the chain in terms of how that affects the rest of the pieces of this machine that we can call a company, right?
One of the things I've talked to a bunch of people about this sort of thing, and one of the things that seems to typify the really, really good IT organizations, the well-run ones, the ones that run like a real machine, is that those IT organizations spend a lot of time thinking about who their customers are, right? And so as the individual contributor, you have an upstream customer who's depending on you to do a thing. And if you think hard about that, then that means that you're probably not going to slip Friday into Tuesday into Thursday or whatever, because you care about that customer, right? And like that customer focus, like I've seen that go up where once I become a manager, I know my customers are horizontal to me, right? They're the other teams, right? Once I become a VP, my customers are the rest of the executives in the company. I'm now delivering a business function, which I think it's like that change in vision is just a fascinating transition as people go through. I want to pivot and kind of go into one thing because it's a podcast and because you're in Silicon Valley. We're legally obligated to talk about AI for a couple of minutes, right? It's not going to be a big thing, but I'm super curious because you've been in all the way since the beginning, in Carta, like back in the day, right? Like and you mentioned modem noises, and I still remember like the 19.2 bing bong modem noise that my thing used to make, right? So like So legit stuff.
We
But
could,
we're,
you could sing it back then,
yeah, no,
right?
exactly right. Like I remember like whistling those tunes. Yeah. So but now we're here and we've got AI coming out. And one of the questions I ask leaders in IT is, do we think that this is a difference in degree or a difference in kind? That is to say, like the internet was another big change in things, right? Is AI sort of like the internet, or is it like the end of all things? Like there's, you can kind of find people who are like, oh my God, it's the end of the world. And some people are like, it's Tuesday. Where's your head at on like where AI is going? How important a change are we really seeing here?
I would say, to your point, each Tuesday is gonna be different from now on. Um, I think this is gonna change the way we work significantly, from the very individual contributor in a software company to someone working in food service, or wherever you want to think it, right? Today you can see, I see my wife sometimes using AI to think about new activities for the classes that she teaches and things like that. That was not a thing a couple of years ago, right?
Yeah,
People
yeah,
was
yeah,
just doing researches online and trying to do their notes and building their own class. And now it's something that would take 2 hours. Now it's 10 minutes. And I have a great example. A couple of weeks ago, my daughter was, hey, Daddy, I want to babysit for the summer. So I want to make some money. I want to take care of kids. I want to advertise that. And I was like, build a website. How do I do that? So I sit myself in front of one of these famous products for coding, and I started my prompt. I'm gonna put you in front of my 12-year-old daughter. She has zero coding or website design skills. So think about her as the one that you need to coach into what to add to a website that is meant for babysitting. It's a big prompt, not like 5 or 10 minutes of that. I got a response like saying, I'm ready, put me in front of your daughter. Let's clear the screens. Tell her to say hi. Right. So she sits in front of the computer. Hi, hi, Juliana. My name is Claude, etc., etc., etc. I'm here to help you. So she, for the first couple of minutes, started turning her head and asking me questions. And I was like, ask him questions, right? So 3 hours later, we have a really good website that I can say
right.
that I couldn't build myself.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
just called him with a calendar, with the dates, with the prices, her about me section, pictures, uh, Google login, Facebook login, Apple Pay. It was like that was mind blowing, right? So that triggered me realizing that if a 12-year-old with zero experience can do that, I need to help my team to understand that we can do better, that we can do
yeah.
more. And so I feel like the future of IT teams is going to be completely different.
And so let's pull on that. Where are we going? Because like the it used to be that IT team's value was in the technical stuff. You were walking around in your head and you knew where to click to add a machine to the domain and blah blah blah. This kind of stuff. And it seems like all that's going away. So what is an IT team now going to focus on?
So I think that it's a live debate, and it's something that is cooking already in different companies and different leaders and with different opinions. But I see this changing in a way where potentially the agentic AI is going to generate the first contact, the frontline interaction with users in a company, and be coached by a human that could potentially be the manager of different agents, right?
Yep.
That can do human in the loop and ask for an escalation, or actually to refine a prompt, right? We are working on our own development. We talked about this already, but we're playing and we're trying to find the middle ground between the things we can build and the things we can understand and support, right? Because these new tools gives you the ability to sit in front of a terminal and in natural language build a great app, a great IT bot, a great in all the integrations and everything. But the problem there is that you can get to the point where you can make that work, but you don't understand it.
Yeah.
You don't understand how it's built. You don't understand how to support it. You don't understand how to fix it if it's broken. And as you keep adding things on top of that, you don't understand why it's becoming slower.
Yep.
You don't. So being careful on what we can do and what we can actually do and understand how we did it, it's where I feel that right now we're trying to draw the line. So between using these tools to build something and actually buy something, we are trying to find a middle ground and understand how we can build something that we can support, right? And we are moving towards from the just talk to Cloud Code or Gemini or whatever to use these tools to build nodes on a workflow, on an agentic AI workflow solution that we can break into little pieces and troubleshoot node by node, right? So that's more suitable for an IT team to potentially understand how it works, right? But I feel like this will start and change with leadership, right? I
Yeah.
am learning myself, training myself. I am about to enroll in a couple of courses to potentially learn how to drive transformational uh, initiatives with agentic AI and things like that. Because, like I said, we need to be careful. We can do great things, but we need to make sure that we can support that. It's not the same to build your own workflow that to do it for your company on an enterprise level, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's fascinating just as a weird historical anecdote. Um, a number of years ago, it's probably 2011 or so, we had an earthquake here in Washington, D.C., right? And what was crazy was the National Cathedral, which was built years and years ago as this beautiful stonework. Some of the stone fell off, right? Because the earthquake shook the building, and some of the stone fell off. And what they figured out was that no one knew how to cut stone anymore. They actually went around looking for people who could fix the building, and there was nobody who could do it. So they had to go get somebody from way far away to come and like fix the building. And I think it's the same thing, which is like, as you think about the things that you build, you really do have to think about the maintenance of them and think about like, do you have the skill set in your organization to actually fix that thing if it breaks, or not? I want to pivot. So, last question, we always ask this. Okay, so if you've got a new person coming into IT and they're coming up, what is one resource you would recommend? A book or a podcast or something that you would say like, hey, you should check this out to get better at your craft?
I would say first, shame on me because I'm really not a book person, and I was always
See all
more
these books
technical.
behind me?
I was always trying to tackle my learning more cutting to the chase and doing this training or this
Okay, yep,
course or watching this video or watching and I would say right now the focus like everything's about AI, right?
yep, sure.
So my recommendation would be for everyone to be up to date with the latest news and releases from all of these big companies that are changing the products like every week and try to understand because the other risk is how do we know that we're not investing or building something that will be useless in 6 months?
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
something way better, faster, cheaper will be released, right? So that's also a thing, right? Who was talking about NCP 2 years ago?
yeah,
And now
yeah, yeah.
everyone is doing that. And how do we know that there's not going to be a new protocol or something groundbreaking in 6 months? And NCP is like, no, that's gone. And then and everyone is investing here, and security companies are writing products to try to secure MCP protocol, and
And
all
then it's
these
gone.
things
Yeah.
are right now moving too fast. So my recommendation would be read the news, subscribe to these RSS feeds from these companies, follow this type websites that are always sharing what's new, and try to find the best influencers in terms of AI that are always like putting videos out, explaining this, explaining that, because this is gonna change fast. And my suggestion with the team was like, make this your hobby. This is gonna feed you in the future
Yeah.
because
Okay.
it is pretty for someone that loves technology. It is a pretty cool hobby to get this to build your own app. I I'm a foodie. I like to cook, and I'm part of a group of Argentinians here in the Bay Area that meet every month or every 2 months to do a food challenge. Everybody cook a particular typical Argentinian dish,
Okay,
and
yeah,
we
yeah.
rate each other. And we used to use like little papers to grade everybody else's food. It was like pretty rudimentary. And I was like, you can just build an app. And I built an app overnight. I put a website up, people subscribe there. We have a calendar of events. You can once we are there and we're tasting every you can just use the app and it was like overnight, right? Now that was crazy. So I feel like people should think about having that as a hobby because I always repeat this. AI is not going to replace technology jobs, but people that knows how to use AI better than you is going to replace you. So we
Yeah.
all need to learn that better. That's going to become a core skill for everyone.
Gotcha. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. And have a great rest of your day.